A deal is a deal is a deal, right? All numbers, terms, structures, all shake out roughly the same. Shouldn't be too much of a difference. This is an efficient market, right? Well, don't let me tell you otherwise, but let me at least paint you a picture in today's video. You've reached the point in business that you want to sell. Money's good, but you want to spend more time with the family. You want to exercise more, do things you've always wanted to do while you're still healthy enough to do it. You have other business pursuits you want to chase down. You're not obsessed with the business and it's an increasingly consolidating space. Whatever the reason is, let's take the baseline assumption that you would like to sell the company. Now, who are you going to sell it to? Well, you've had 5 or 6, 7, 10 people that had reached out over the last few years. You have their emails, so you spend a few hours digging through the emails, finding their contacts. These should be the best parties, right? They were interested in us. Okay, so you send an email to these people saying, "Hi Bob, hi Sally, I'm looking to sell my company. How much would you be willing to offer me?" Email comes back 3 days later. Good to hear from you. Well, in order for us to evaluate this, we're going to need a little bit of information. We've attached our 6 pages of questions that we'd like to see. You start flipping through that. Okay, they need all the financial statements on a monthly basis for the last 12 years. They need all the tax returns. They need bank reconciliations. They need an employee census of everybody's name who works for the company, how much they get paid, how long they've been here, what's their blood type. They need, every customer's name and how much of our business that they've given to us over the years and who are our main points of contact. Should we be sharing this with them? Well, according to them, this is what you need to give them in order for them to evaluate if perhaps maybe they could potentially be prospectively interested in a possible acquisition of you. So you muster through it and you say, okay, well, they seem like honest people from what I could see on the internet, so we'll give them this information. Treasure trove of information goes across the transom, and they respond back 2 weeks after you send them the information saying, this is good, a good start. We're going to need just a little bit more information, and in this attached 8 pages of follow-up information, we'd love to learn just a little bit more. So, okay, for this customer, how is the relationship structured? How do you price things out? For these employees, how do you pay them? How do you incentivize them? And are you sure they're not looking to leave the company? Again, this starts to feel like a little bit of a fishing expedition. It has to at least be the inkling that, this is a lot of information, and how much information should we be sharing before we get to know if they're going to be an offer? And then if they do put an offer in, is it going to be a good one? And so you then say, okay, I'm providing round 2 of information, but this is where it's going to stop. We can't give you that much more information here. Let's say there were 5 parties. One of them says, we're deeply disappointed that you're not willing to acquiesce to our exercise. This is standard in the industry, and you must relent and give us the information. Because you're not, we don't think you're a serious seller, therefore we are self-selecting ourselves out of the process. All of that work, and one is down. Now you have 2 other people that say, well, based on all of this information, we're just not ready to move in that strategic direction because this isn't a high enough priority on our strategic plan list, and we are not looking to make any acquisitions for the balance of this decade. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but it's not that different from some messages. But thank you for all of this information. This is wonderful. This will be very helpful. I know we have an NDA in place, but it does say if we receive this information from any other sources that it's not confidential. So if you need to prove that this was confidential and we only learned it because of you, good luck. But given we're your competitor, don't worry. We'll be very honest with this, and it shouldn't have any impact on how we poach customers, clients, employees, right? So there's 2 parties left, though. Don't worry. We're still in good shape. We've still got 2 people that are interested in the company. And so a few more conversations take place, and one of them comes up with an offer of 3 times EBITDA. Another one comes in with an offer of 3.25 times EBITDA. And you are trying to extract a data range, or is this good? Is this bad? What should it be? What do companies typically trade for? I've asked ChatGPT a bunch of questions, and it said it should be higher. I don't understand. And you have what we call a data line. You have 2 points, and you can rest a pencil on it, and no real way of knowing if this is good or not. And so you say, hey, I've been negotiating deals my whole life, so let's just negotiate this and find some terms that work. And so you end up getting someone to a little bit higher, but there's going to be some structure in the deal. Don't worry, you'll get some at closing, you'll get some over time, and it's likely to all work out well. And you say, okay, well, look, I did want to get to the next chapter, the next season of life, so let's just sign this and move on. I guess it's the best that the market's going to have. So you start this next season of life. You say, okay, I got half of the deal at closing. I'm going to get 25% of it as an earnout if the profit of the company reaches a level a little bit higher than what it has been, okay, and I'll get 25% of it over 7 years after I wait 2 years and I sit behind the bank and they paid on enough of the bank debt. I guess that's just the way these things work. And so you then start existence. You've sold the company. Big announcement. Everybody's happy for you. Wow, you finally sold it. Congrats. How's the next season of life feel? Well, it kind of feels the same. You show up to work. You do the things you have to do. But you've got a few people now that every day they're sending piles of emails. Where's this? What does this number look like? How is this working? What are we going to do about this? And not only that, you're getting phone calls and you're saying, what do the numbers look like? And how are we dealing with this customer? And how are we doing that? And oh, by the way, we have this other company we'd like you to come and do some work for and make some introductions for. We have this other company we'd like you to get involved with because we think it could be valued. So you're going to be there at this point, at this point. And you start to say to them, well, guys, I'm working now for a boss. I'm working now more than I was prior to selling the business. And they say, yeah, but you know what? It's probably in your best interest because both the seller note and the earnout are contingent on you staying with the business for 3 years. Remember we agreed to that in your transition agreement that you negotiated yourself? Well, you start to reread that and you say, well, this feels like golden handcuffs and really doesn't feel that golden at all. And so all of a sudden, ownership has seemed to evolve into a job. Thing you were trying to avoid when you started the business, and the thing you certainly didn't want as you were trying to phase out of the business. But things progress a little bit, and you say, okay, well, I guess if I behave appropriately and do the things we're supposed to do here, then they'll treat me well. But 3 months into it, who was formerly your right-hand person at the company, you get the call that, hey, we really didn't like the way Larry or Heather was working last week, so we're going to fire them. And you say, whoa, 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 they've been here for 25 years. They have so much tribal knowledge of how the business works. That's a bit rash. Yeah, well, you know what? We're trying to improve margins across things, and this is based on our metrics and KPIs. This is the time to fire somebody. So we're going to fire him. But look, we're going to find a replacement over the next year or so. But in the meantime, if you don't mind just kind of carrying a little bit of the water for them, this will be good for the team. This will be good for you. And all of a sudden, you not only have one job, you have two. And so the sale of your business led to getting a couple years worth of money at day one, a lot of uncertainty about what the future is going to look like, a job, less time, less freedom, and you frustrated, saying, if this was what I was going to get, I should just shut the thing down. You needed the time more than you needed the money, right? You wanted the freedom more than you wanted the money. But if you ask acquirer, this is just the way it works. This is just the way the world turns. And if you wanted to sell your business, you should have known that this is how this functions. But does it really? Well, I would say in the majority of situations where we hear of people selling businesses themselves, selling businesses poorly represented, picture looks a little bit like this. Some of these variables, some all of these variables. But what if you had someone advocating for you? Someone who's done this a bunch of times. How would this process look different? A bunch of times, 100 times, multiple hundreds of times, billions of dollars of transactions. Now, just like in your business, if you've seen enough things enough times, you start to see kind of the gristle. You start to see the game within the game, the variables, the way the ball bounces, and where you want to be and how you want to pursue things. So let's walk through this fact pattern quickly, but how the picture could look a little bit different. Now let's say instead of 5 parties, you talk to 200 parties. Not just a random email blast, but 200 parties that were in the space, that perhaps lacked your access, perhaps lacked your capabilities, where you were a missing puzzle piece to them, where you solved some pain for them. It wasn't just, could this be nice? Could this be interesting? What's the return on capital? But we need this to avoid pain. Do you think that would give you some more leverage in the negotiations? And then what do you say to them? How much information do you share with them? If we get a 10-page document of questions from one of our clients, we shred it up. It's a good fire starter. We are going to give them the information that we deem sufficient for them to put an offer forward. If they say this isn't enough, you say, we know how this rodeo works. You have enough. Maybe another question, maybe another 2 questions, but you have sufficient information to put forth an offer. And if not, they're probably not that interested. Probably more of a suspect than a prospect, not someone we want to chat with. So now, solve the problems. We know who to talk to. We know what to say to them. Now, getting into the gristle of the deal. We're not going to give half the deal after the closing. And for the stuff that's after the closing, it's going to be certain. It's not going to be based on things that can be manipulated. It's not going to be based on things that tie to your indentured servitude going forward. Sale of a business is a sale of a business. You are trading ownership of a business for a future in which you do not own a business and you are not a long-term employee of a business. If the goal is to get to the next season of life, that is what's accomplished. So, you know what? We don't like these 3 years of transition. We like 1 year. We like 90 days doing the same thing. We like 9 months where, yeah, you can pick up the phone. So imagine that. You stick around for 60 to 90 days. Everything gets handed over well, and then you say, thanks, guys. I'll be with the family. Thanks, guys. I'll be on the ocean, lake, etc. Thanks, guys. I'm going to be doing what I want to do. Give me a shout if there's an issue. Right? Now you have the leverage. Now you have the freedom. Now you've actually accomplished the things you want to accomplish. And as for other employees of the companies, people that helped you grow the business, if you want to protect them, these are things that can be negotiated. So-and-so will not be fired. So-and-so will keep this title. So-and-so will get a raise. Oh, you can ask for those things when you sell a business? You certainly can. And there's lots of things you can ask for. And again, if you're not swimming in this swimming pool all day, it's not so much the things you know that you don't know. There's going to be things you don't even know that you don't know. And so, not to paint a Dickensian tale of 2 cities here, but that is the reality. In the world of selling a business, it's not like selling a house. Things don't tend to fall into a very narrow gap of outcomes. There is a huge bell curve of the ways these things can end. And if you're getting the unsolicited offers for your business, do you think it's more likely that it's people looking for a deal? Do you think it's more likely someone who's looking to buy something without a banker, without a representative? If someone knocked on your house and said, I want to buy your house, but please, 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 don't use a representative, don't use a broker, just let me buy it. Would you get a little suspicious? Well, perhaps you should have the same level of concern when you get the email saying, oh, we'd be wonderful, we would love you, we'd be the best person you could ever do this with, but don't talk to other people. So, things to think about. If you want to sell your business now, if you want to sell it down the road, just remember these 2 pictures. Remember these 2 feelings. Remember these 2 situations that you could find yourself in and say, which one could be better? Is a banker free? No. But if the outcome is far better, far more lucrative, far more freeing than 10x the cost of the banker, I would propose that it's a good proposition. But again, everybody makes their own decisions. Best for you to just have the facts. Best for you to just see what life could look like, what life may look like, and make the decision as to which side of that fence you want to fall on. I'm Arthur Petropoulos, managing partner here at Hillview Partners. We're a lower middle market investment banking firm helping companies sell $1 million to $10 million EBITDA companies across the world, across all industries, but largely owner, family, founder, entrepreneur, small group of investor-owned companies to larger acquirers up the food chain in what can oftentimes be a very important yet nuanced game of cards that needs to be done effectively, efficiently, and by someone that's been doing this for decades. Hope the week continues to go well for everyone. Appreciate everyone tuning in. God bless. See everyone next time.